Welcome back to Good Morning Europe. Now, Greece is hosting the President of the European Parliament as it marks 40 years as a member of the European Club. During its history within the EU, Greece has seen highs, such as the creation of the single market and the single currency, and lows, like the financial crisis and austerity measures. But Athens has been a steady member of the bloc, and as a veteran of 4 decades, may now play a key role in integrating some of its Balkan neighbours as new entrants to the EU. To walk us through some of the events of the past 40 years and to guide us on what the future might hold for relations, we're now joined from Athens by George Papandreou, former Greek Prime Minister, currently serving as a member of the Greek Parliament. Thank you very much, Mr. Papandreou, for joining us here on Euronews. It's a pleasure to have you. The journey of Greece into the EU is deeply intertwined with your family's history. Your grandfather was in power shortly after negotiations first started in '59, and your father was elected Prime Minister the year Greece joined the then European Economic Community. What would you say the past 40 years have meant for your country?
Well, it has been an odyssey, as you have said, an adventure, and it's an adventure for Europe itself, which is a project still under construction. Greece is a country that has been changing and adapting and contributing. But I think what this project has is, even though it's in transition, there are some very core values that are so important for all of us. Different ethnicities, different religions, different histories, wars, but we are together. And we are together on the basis of principles of democracy, human rights, rule of law, good governance, solidarity, and of course peace building. And this has been very important for Greece. Greece feels, of course, that Europe has even more potential to contribute to these values. And as long as we serve these values, and I think this is what Greece has tried to do, this is what will help Europe grow, and of course Greece too. And in some funny way, peculiar way, Greece has been at the center of many of the developments in these last 40 years in Europe. I remember myself having Giscard d'Estaing handing over to the Greek presidency the constitution of the European Union, where we worked closely with him on this very, very big project. Or, as you mentioned earlier, the opening up to the Balkans, our Thessaloniki decision to have a policy for integrating Western Balkans into the European Union. The crisis with Iraq, where it split Europe, and we were, as a presidency, trying to bring together the two different sides. But also the financial crisis and the refugee crisis. Greece was central and part of this crisis also, in seeing how we could overcome it, not only as Greece, but also as a European Union. And so, yes, Greece has both learned a lot. We have gained a lot from even in infrastructure and growth and development, but I think more in serving these values that really keep Europe together and give Europe a prospect not only for our own citizens but for the world.
You mentioned some key moments in the history of the two sides there, and with regards to some of the core values of the EU, last week we have seen the importance of cohesion among members when, this week actually, when a Ryanair flight took off from Athens was diverted and forced to land in Belarus. Do episodes like that one show European countries are stronger together?
Absolutely, and this is a horrible moment. It still is horrible that there are so many political prisoners, and of course the particular journalist Roman Protasevich. I think again, this is an affront not only to Europe and its integrity, but to European values. And we must do everything in our powers. And I say everything in our powers. I have understood in working in Europe for many years, we have sometimes underestimated the potential Europe has. We have more capacity than we sometimes believe when we work together. And I think we really have to have a strong reaction to the Belarusian government and Lukashenko, and make sure that not only Roman Protasevich, but all those political prisoners are freed, and we bring at some point, and hopefully soon, democracy to Belarus.
You mentioned the benefits yielded by Greece in the last 40 years, but the country continues to face challenges. The economy has not been fixed. It continues to be deeply dependent on EU assistance. Would you say your future in the Eurozone is secure?
Well, it's a good question, and I think what our entrance into the Eurozone revealed is that when Greece became a member, don't forget that Greece came out of dictatorships, out of wars, civil wars, not so far in the past. So moving to a democratic and to of the club of the United Europe was not just simply an automatic switch. It is deep adaptation and changes. And we were not really asked at that point to make these deep changes in our institutions. There was a lot of clientelism, a state that had come out of a dictatorship, lack of transparency, the arbitrariness often of power and separation of powers. And when we hit the financial crisis, I think it was because at some point a government came into Greece, did not follow or bent the rules of all these basic principles because we had weaker institutions. So I think it was very important for us to really change, and that was of course, I was then responsible at the government after that to make deep reforms. I think we still need to do this so that we can be more productive, more efficient, more transparent, I would say more democratic, because that was the basis of the financial crisis. But we need to move into, as Europe now is doing, into a sustainable Green Deal. And this is, I think, Greece has great potential to use its sun, its wind, its geothermal energy. It's young, very, very, very smart people, many of them now as migrants in other parts of Europe. We need to put that into that capacity to work for a sustainable Greece. We have great capacity, I think, and this is a great opportunity for our country.
You touched some of the points that I think you're going to make next, but I want to get this from you very briefly. What can we expect from the next 40 years of EU-Greece membership?
I think Greece has a very important role to play in helping the region. We are still in a region with great challenges. We have our problems with our neighbor Turkey, but in the long run and strategically, we want to see a European Turkey. Now, what form that will that be full membership or some other form? I think a European Turkey is strategically important. A European Balkans, getting the Western Balkans in, the neighborhood policy, which we developed during our presidency some years ago, has to, basically what we're saying is Europe will survive if its values survive, and these values have to be spread to a wider neighborhood. If these values do not survive, if they are overcome by authoritarianism, by demagoguery, by isolationism and this racism and xenophobia, that will undermine the European project. I believe Greece can be in the forefront to moving these values forward, but at the same time it has to adapt too. It has to make changes, internal changes, and I would say that as Europe is a peace project, that's how it started with the great names of Monet and Schuman and the Ventotene platform.
Thank you.
Now it's challenged to play a wider role, the role of humanizing globalization. I think this is what we're dealing with this pandemic or with climate change, humanizing globalization, making a more just world and a more sustainable one.
Thank you very, very much, Prime Minister George Papandreou, and a member of the Greek Parliament. Thank you very much for joining us here on Euronews.